Please introduce yourself, briefly explain why you are running, and identify the experience or perspective that you would bring to the Michigan House.
Very good. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the Wexford GOP for putting this event on. I know it takes a lot of time. So my name is Gary Anderson, and I've been married for 45 years. I have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. This year I celebrate my 25th year as a small business owner in New Wave. My business sells both domestic and international. As a business owner, I developed the skills to listen and to negotiate. I strongly believe that you need to listen before you lead. I learned early on that you can't spend money that you don't have. My business handles industrial and commercial cleaning equipment, and I have the tools and the knowledge on how to clean up dirty areas, such as Lansing. Back in 2022, I was elected as a chair for the Wexford County Republican Party. I got really involved both in the politics, both locally and through our district. I'm currently on a 5-county material management team, which is basically waste material. Every election is important. We must encourage others to get out and vote and turn this state red. Our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren are dependent on us. This is a very important reason why I decided to run. Good, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Gore, the same question?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Luke, for all the work that you do up here at Wexford County. My name is Jackson Durr. I was born and raised in Fremont, Michigan. I graduated from Fremont High School. After that, I went on to attend Western Michigan University, which gave me an insight into how colleges are operating here in our state right now. I also became a multi-engine rated commercial pilot with the FAA and flew aircraft many corners of our state for many years. During that time, I started my own business in Fremont called Takeoff Marketing. I provided marketing services to small businesses throughout the county, throughout the district, as well as running political campaigns. I also was elected to serve as a precinct delegate for the Republican Party of New Wave County, and I was appointed to serve on the tax allocation board for New Wave County as well. I'm running because for many years I've watched as my friends, colleagues, classmates, and even my family members have left the state in search of better economic opportunities. For many young families growing up in a state like Michigan comes with many, many challenges, and for many it's easier to find those opportunities in the American dream in another state. So, we have a lot of problems that we have to clean up here in Michigan, like Gary said. We gotta start from the bottom up. So you need somebody who's willing to listen, communicate, and negotiate on behalf of common sense legislation that will positively affect everyone here in Michigan. We gotta keep young families in Michigan, keep young entrepreneurs in Michigan so they can grow a business here. And that's something that I've seen firsthand, and I've seen why people are leaving.
Mr. Isaac, the same question?
Thank you. So the other day, as I was meeting folks at their homes, a gentleman sat down on the porch with me. He said, "Take a seat, slow down, you know." He said, "What are 2 things you hope to address?" And I said, "Well, everything, of course, but if I have to pick 2, there's a practical one, and then there's a cultural, spiritual one." And the practical question is the cost of living. I hear this at every door, similar to Jackson. Property taxes, car insurance, utility bills, they all outstrip our nearby neighbors and seem to be growing quicker every year. So the cost of living, the availability of jobs, affordable houses, it all ties together into what makes Michigan a place people want to stay in, can afford to stay in. And then there's a second issue. It's related. In some ways it's the cause. It's a cultural, spiritual question. It's questions about hope, whether our government can be trusted at all. It's about respect for authority, as I hear some of the sheriff's departments and stuff talk about civility toward each other, and whether in Lansing or in person or online. These are the root problems behind many of the problems we have, whether it's education or abortion or crime or mental health. So what we need are good leaders. It's written that when the righteous thrive, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. So I'm a father, I'm a husband, I've got a stack of kids here, and I love them, and I started a farm, contracting business. I'm as comfortable with a hammer as with a desk. The last month, I visited over 1,000 homes, and I'm out of time. Wow.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend?
Yes, my name is Ben Townsend. The only candidate up here that has a background in law. As the 30-year director of the Ecclesiastical Law Center, we help churches in legal battles with government entities nationwide and also internal struggles in the churches. If we lost in lower courts, I was the one that doing the legal research for all the briefs headed up to the higher courts. In my 30 years, we had a 90% win rate in those appeal cases, trying to protect churches. In addition, I started a church in music, and it grew to 150 in attendance in 25 years. I'm an accomplished musician, as you'll be able to see from my CDs on my table. 14-year high school teacher in government economics, a choir and band director, 7-year college professor, and a 5-year college administrator are all proof that I'm being able to work with all kinds of people of all kinds of ages. But you've heard the saying, jack of all trades, master of none. But the rest of that original saying is, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Well, a 6-year county commissioner in Wexford County, I was known as the busiest commissioner with a total of 14 boards and committees. Currently, I'm the vice president of a wonderful airport here, 8-year member of Northern Lake Community Mental Health, also Networks Northwest, which helps small businesses, and is over iWorks also. So I'm currently the zoning administrator for 11 townships in Wexford and Manistee counties. I wrote the master plans for all these counties, and also I'm an author of 6 books in church law and polity, a novel that reached number 5 on the Kindle list of legal thrillers, and a history of my home township, Springville Township, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vance.
Good to be here this morning, and thank you, Luke, to be back up here in Cadillac. I always introduce my wife because my wife and I are on this journey together. This is a partnership. This is how we've lived our life. I've spent 25 years pastoring and spent 35 years in the construction industry. I serve as a senior superintendent right now in Muskegon on one of the largest projects in Michigan, $220 billion. And there's 3 senior superintendents on that job, and I'm one of them. Also, I have a purpose and vision for all generations, for now and for the future. We've been married for 47 years, and we have 5 children. We homeschooled before it was popular, and we were just avoided the vaccines until our children were older. We chose that route because we feel that we have the right to educate our children and raise our children the way they need to be. Also, I plan on serving you with excellence. I have already penned and drafted 20 bills that I'm going to focus on to help give me focus on when I step foot in Lansing. That's what I'm going to focus on. And I've already got those in writing. My perspective is to serve. My wife and I have served for 35 years in our community. I have worked internationally, and I also have served in missions internationally. Have been in Europe, Timbuktu, Mali, West Africa, of all places, in Central America. So I'm here to serve you now and look forward for the future.
Thank you. We will now move down the line to our first question after our introductions to Mr. Dior. The role of state government. Michigan state government is responsible for everything from roads to schools, business regulation, and public health. What is one responsibility you believe the state must perform well, and what is one area it should leave to individuals, families, businesses, or communities?
One responsibility that the state must perform well is partnering with our local communities, not dictating how they run. Currently, the state has grown to be so large, and it's full of a ton of bureaucrats that are appointed by the governor, not elected. They are right now regulating how our businesses run, they're regulating how we operate our daily lives, and how our township should act to the people. We have to put the power back to the townships. We have to reinstate and protect local control. That starts right with reforming and amending Public Act 233. The state shouldn't be forcing these large-scale solar projects onto our small townships. We don't want them. Same thing goes for data centers. We don't want them. And the state is saying you're going to have them because we already wrote the legislation back in 2022 to force you guys to have them. The government should focus on keeping taxes low and regulations reasonable for the people that it serves. It should protect the people, not enforce the people. Decisions should be made as close to the people as possible. I was just talking to Gary earlier, your local township board or your local city board has more authority over you than what the state government and the federal government does, because they're close to the people. They hear the people every single day. If you have a problem with them, you can show up at their doorstep and talk to them. That's not the same when it comes to Lansing. We have to protect our constitutional rights and our individual freedoms, and the government should be accountable for every single taxpayer dollar that we spend. We have to lower our taxes. We are spending through the roof because of all these bureaucratic appointments.
Thank you. Mr. Isaac, same question.
So, some of the things that are most important for the state to be working on that we can all agree on would include things like infrastructure and conservation. These are issues that are too big for any individual business to handle, like roads. And so it's the right role of government to make sure that we're getting electricity delivered to our door, that our roads are functioning, and so forth. Likewise, conservation, as you look at how you take care of a Great Lake, that's not something that a citizen can do. So those are things that I think we are doing pretty well in Michigan, but the problem is the things that we're doing too much of. A couple of places I would particularly point out where we have a little too much of the government involved is government taking over parenting. As we look at education, it's the responsibility of the parents to educate, and it's delegated to the schools. You bring your kid to school, you say, please, if you bring your kid to this center, you say, teach my kid how to shoot a pellet gun. But you gave them that authority. They didn't show up and take your kid. And I think of a world in Brave New World, for example, where the kids are raised sort of in labs by the government. That's definitely not the role of government. Another place the government often likes to step into and doesn't belong is in markets. I believe that free markets are something that keep us functioning. They can be trusted, not to be perfect, but to be self-correcting eventually. And the government loves to get its fingers into the market and push the price up here and subsidize that. A lot of the challenges we're facing with control and people's conversations about solar centers and data and all kinds of problems, it's not because the free market is doing this, it's because we've got our finger on the scale and we gave them these big subsidies.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, same question.
I think the number one thing from my perspective is the balance of taxation, and particularly property taxes. I think what Governor Engler did back in 1995 with Proposition A was a genius thing to help people in Michigan take 18 mil off of their taxes. That would have gone to schools and other things, he only raised the sales tax 2 cents. Now, it didn't hurt us back then. I don't know if we do that again because there are different factors involved, but we need to do something about property taxes because right now it's taxing people like me, an elder person on fixed income, right out of my house. It's almost like I'm paying rent, several $1,000s every year. But that's what we need to do. Plus, with individuals, I think property rights is the main thing. We'll deal with that in just a little bit, the importance of that. Families' privacy. Businesses, we need to keep their tax at 6%. I think that's very good for small businesses especially. And also local communities need to zone their own properties and not have Lansing tell us how to zone.
Thank you. Mr. Vance?
Yeah, the proper role and limits of Michigan state government, I believe that the first utmost is protecting our God-given rights. The very first Article 1, Section 1 of the Michigan Constitution states, all political power is inherent in the people. Government is instituted for their equal benefit, security, and protection. Right there, the power is really not even in the local governments. It's in you and it's me. It's we the people. And that's what we need to understand. When we understand that we the people have the power, then we understand why it's important for us to vote. Then we understand why it's important for us to make educated decisions and know who's running, what they're good for, what their character is, and what their experience is. Too often we have people voting for people just because their name or whatever, and we don't understand. And so with us to understand what the role of the government is, first of all, it is to protect our God-given liberties and therefore not interfere in our personal life and not overrun the townships and the counties. You and I have the power to put the right people in the townships. You and I have the right people, have the power to put the right people in the county. And that's where it begins, and that's where our power begins.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
This is a very good question. We're seeing a constant divide down in Lansing, and nothing's getting done. If I was to give them a grade, I'd give them a D. Nothing's getting done down there. I don't know if it's pride or what people want up to their due of their own. I think back of the three branches of our government, the executive, legislative, and judicial. The executive branch has controlled by the governor, SOS, Secretary of State, and the Attorney General. Look what they've been doing. Nothing. She gets away with everything out there. Then I look down at the legislative, which creates and passes laws. They're doing pretty good, but we still have that divide out there. Again, what is getting done? Nothing. Judicial. They interpret the laws. We've got laws. There have been lawsuits against the Secretary of State. No accountability. We need to bring this back locally and have local control on a lot of things. So, a lot of them have already prior mentioned about the data centers and the solar farms, and I'm in total agreement that it has to be brought back locally. So, thanks.
Thank you. All right, we will move to our next question regarding legislative priorities. Mr. Eisen, we'll start with you. A first-term legislator has limited time, staff, and influence, especially when state government is divided between the parties. The question is, what would be your highest legislative priority, and how would you try to move it forward?
So there's a couple answers to that. It sort of depends exactly how much clout the Republican Party has when it happens. I mean, if we have the option to, we probably couldn't bring jobs and prosperity back to Michigan any faster than implementing right to work, but we might not get that option. So at the top of my list, besides that, as I look around, is thinking about the regulations and how EGLE works. Right now, one of the challenges that is just inherent in Michigan's cultural problem is there's an adversarial relationship in conservation, in EGLE, in enforcement everywhere. They don't show up and say, let's fix this, let's find a way to make this work. They show up and say, behavior will put you out of business. And I think the answer to that is for the legislators to go to EGLE and say, find a way to play nicely, or here's the funding you're not going to have, here's the staff you're not going to lose, and you won't have time to be a pain in the butt for all the businesses. There's a tattoo parlor actually very close to here, and they've been in the news lately. They were set up outside of town, I think Manton maybe, and they were required by the state to be connected to an approved water supply. Well, they're on a well because there's no public water there. They've been shut down. They've been appealed it, and they've been told to kick stones because it doesn't apply. Now, a reasonable person would have said, let's approve this water supply by testing it. We have facilities, we have labs, let's test it. But instead, it was this adversarial and useless relationship which disrespects the rights of the people and the function and purpose of government.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
I was an 8-year member of Networks Northwest who runs my works. One of the first things I do is try to protect small businesses and also kids that are trying to better themselves in education. I've seen the GO program work very well, and also the apprenticeship. We have apprentice graduates every year in front of us at one of our board meetings, and it's working great, where you put them actually into a company, and the company teaches them how they should work in that company. And it's just a genius way to do it. As a matter of fact, apprenticeships have worked for the last 2,000 years. But still, I would be heavy on what Networks Northwest is doing here in the 10-county area, but also with helping small businesses and individuals.
Thank you. Mr. Vance, same question.
Yes. Stepping into Lansing is, first of all, listening to you and also learning from the senior legislators there. So it's joining arms with those who believe the same way, but also getting to know my colleagues so I can begin to understand how I can work with them. But beyond listening to your voices in that, it's also bringing an axe to the overspending. Lansing has a spending problem. We don't have a lack of income in this state, but we do have a problem of really just using the money unwisely. Also, I would one of the first things I would do, begin to reduce taxes or eliminate taxes. I would support what they call the Help Up Plan, HB 5872, 5880. That is, eliminate the state ed tax, eliminate the state transfer tax or the pop-up tax, and also eliminate the personal property tax on business equipment and machinery. It's absolutely absurd that farmers are having to pay taxes on their tractors and on their tools. It's absurd that in the industry that the use tax even exists. We need to also cut regulations, slow down, or stop the increases that are going on. No more new departments. It's time to cut and reduce departments, but no more new departments.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, same question?
Being a freshman, first of all, there's more than one, but being a freshman down there, I want to learn what committees are out there. Committees get things done. I want that committee that fits into my lifestyle, what I have experienced throughout the 25 years plus of being a businessman. We need to expand our workforce. COVID brought in a lack. People didn't want to work. Today that still happens. We need to be very competitive and bring in our workforce. Right to life, we heard that. Right to work. We've heard that left and right. We need to incorporate that back into our strategic design. Affordable housing and support for childcare is very big. Throughout Michigan, there are numerous places that have waiting lists out there to get into. We need to explore that. We need to actually expand on that. And another one is foster care and CPS. There's some reform bills sitting down there on someone's desk that they don't want to touch. It's one of those voodoo things. Our foster care students and parents need help. So that's what I would look at too. So.
Thank you. Mr. Burek?
Yeah, my first priority as a legislator in Lansing is to reduce the tax burden on working families. Second of all, building an economy that young families can stay in Michigan and grow in Michigan and grow a business here in Michigan. 4 of my priorities, I think a lot of them have already been mentioned, but the 4 policies I would immediately work on is reinstating right to work, repealing the prevailing wage, One Fair Wage Act, and the Sick Pay Leave Act. I lobbied for both of those bills a couple years ago, but Democrats had control in 2022 and forced them to happen. So we have to work on those bills right away to build an economy. Those 4 would turn this state right around. I would direct the Legislative Service Bureau immediately to get to work on those. One thing that was mentioned in the question is having limited time. I'm a young guy. I have a lot of time. I have the time, all the time in the world. I don't have kids that I go home to at night. I have all the time in the world to work for you guys, the people. So those are some of the priorities of mine. But we got to keep people here in Michigan. Above that, we have to reinstate and protect local control, like I mentioned earlier. And one other thing that would help businesses too is reinstating the open and obvious doctrine. There's so much unnecessary litigation in our state and in our country that is forcing business owners out. And they all are required to have the insurance to protect themselves. All of that costs a lot of money. It's forcing business owners to leave.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend, we will start with you for the next question. Large energy projects have put conservative values in tension, local control and the rights of willing property owners, also the dynamic of state control. When local control and private property rights conflict, what should carry more weight? How would you apply that principle to large wind, solar, and battery storage projects?
Well, I'm your guy for that. In May, in re-implementing provisions of Public Act 233, the appeals court, I watched that case unfold before me, and I read all the briefs on both sides, and they sided on the side of property rights. And I read the briefs of the 3 farmers that had attorneys that were putting large solar farms on their land because they cannot make the next generation without the extra money. And their cries brought tears to my eyes. Monday night, as a zoning administrator, I was up in Wexford Township at a church up there with 100 people from Wexford Township, and they were all up in airs with a solar farm going up there. Well, I wrote the master plan for up there, so it's not going in a lot of the area, in the ag area. But let me, if I have 30 seconds, let me read what I wrote in the zoning master plan. The right to privacy and the right to property are two basic fundamental rights of all American citizens. The master plan should make certain these constitutionally protected property rights are not violated. It is vital that special consideration be paid to the desires of landowners who have their retirement locked up in their land. They need to be given options for capturing the development value of their land, even if more dense development of land is not permitted. Thus, least restrictive means should be balanced with property rights. This approach should also be implemented in rural areas that have larger tracts of land.
Thank you. Mr. Vance, the same question.
That's very good, Ben. I would just want to piggyback on that. Decisions by and for any district or for any county should be made by that county, not from Lansing. That's the bottom line of where it should be. Based on what Ben had just said too, is the last debate I presented this, I've already written a bill to repeal PA 233. And that this is where my thought, my actions are foresight, heading it off at the pass. And so it's gathering other legislators together, and they can apply this, we can draft it, we can change it, whatever. But that's my focus. So when I draft these bills, it's because my focus is I'm already working for you. My wife and I, our kids are out of the house and that. I work 10 to 12 hours a day already in the construction industry. I'm not going to put in any less time. I'm a night owl. I put in a lot of hours on the phone and so forth. I know how to work hard. I've done it ever since junior high, okay? I worked on a farm, baling. I was a janitor in a bank and in a post office at the age of 16. I know what it means to be locked in at Kmart at night, cleaning floors. I've done what I've had to do to raise my family, working 2 to 3 jobs. When I go to Lansing, it's a 24/7 job for you, and that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, same question.
Can you tell me which one we're on, so I'm making notes?
Yes, we are on local control of private property.
Thank you. Local control and private property rights. This is kind of an interesting topic because local control should oversee what happens on the private properties out there. I think we all agree that local control must be brought back from Lansing. Currently, the state has control on solar farms and the data centers, as we were talking about PA 233. Who else can make decisions that are best for local communities? I believe local control, local leaders can be more effective with better outcomes. While the state enacts laws and policy, it also has to take into consideration the local government and local residents. So we need to bring local control back.
Thank you. Mr. Dior, the same question.
Yeah, we can all agree that local control is important. I think everyone up here is, that's on our top priority list. Here's the problem though. Public Act 233 is already, the repeal has already been introduced into the House. It passes the House easier because it's Republican controlled. It gets to the Senate, it dies. The Senate is Democrat controlled, so is the executive seat. So it's not going to happen right now. They refuse to give that up. Why? Because it aligns with their policies and their platform perfectly. It's exactly what they want. They took back all 3 branches of our state government in 2022 and implemented this law immediately. That's why you see solar farms popping up here. That's why. And that's why it's hard to repeal them, because we don't have the control. Here's what we do have control. We have control over the farmers who are leasing their land and selling their land to solar. I'm proud to have my campaign endorsed by Farm Bureau AgriPac because I've worked in agriculture for many, many years. I've worked with the same farm owners who are leasing their land to solar. I see it from their viewpoint. They say, we have no other option. We have to lease this land to solar. It's that or go bankrupt. So if we start with the landowners, because they're the ones with the ultimate control. If they say no, it doesn't happen. We can argue all day long about the state having control over whether this happens or not and whether the local township should, but it starts with the property owners. They're the ones who can say no, and they're the ones that can stop it. So we immediately start helping the farmers. How do we do that? Reduce regulations on from equal. We reinstate the right to work. We protect the right to farm. All of these policies that we can implement immediately that will help our farmers. It'll make a difference when we back them up as our state government. And when the solar farms come knocking on the door, they might say, no, I'm good. I'd rather be farming. I'd rather pass this on to the next generation.
Thank you. Mr. Isaacs, any questions?
Thank you, yes. So we all know about the state and how that needs to change. As we look at local government, it would be hard to say it better than Ben did here, and I hope that many of our townships, and as they look at their master plans, are able to come at it with that perspective that respects first the rights of the property owner, and then how it affects the neighbors and their control over it. My question, along with Jackson, is why the farmers are selling this land, but even more, why the state is subsidizing it. So right now, we're talking about how to put our foot on the brakes of expanding the solar farms and data centers. Well, the data centers are being offered property tax relief. Now, hang on a sec. We're about to spend a bunch of time talking about how the people can't afford to keep their houses through property taxes. Why would we give a data center property tax relief? Likewise, the subsidies for solar are about 30%. Why are we subsidizing something that most people don't want in their backyard? And if we are subsidizing it, and if we're so Democrat controlled that we can't change that, then perhaps we can change those subsidies to put pressure on them to put solar farms in places that make sense. Right now, we have a USGS classification for farmland. There's prime farmland, there's usable farmland, and then there's definitely not farmland. If we simply use a system like that, look, you're 30%, you're not gonna get that if you put that on the prime farmland. Then they could shell out the extra couple, $50,000 to hire a bulldozer, level something, and make it into usable land for themselves without taking the land that we value most. So I'm saying, if you put your foot on the brakes and the gas at the same time, you're just gonna burn out the state engine and our budget. Let's figure out what the pressure is and fix that.
Thank you. Mr. Vance, we will begin with you in our next section on election integrity. Michigan continues to debate voter identification, citizen verification, absentee voting, and the administration of elections. What specific change, if any, would you make to Michigan election law to strengthen both election security and public confidence?
The U.S. Constitution states that no U.S. citizen shall be denied the right or to be able to vote. We need voter ID, period. We need to get rid of Dominion counting machines and any machines that we do use to help tabulate, and that should be U.S. made with U.S. parts. We should also get rid of 40 days of voting. Election day is election day. And we've always been able to have absentee ballots for those who really need to have a need to mail in their ballots and that. I have no problem with that. But you can get an absentee ballot and you can take it in on election day also. But we need voter ID right up front, and we need to be able to know that nothing is tied to the internet. No modems, no internet connections, whatever. And that needs to be eliminated. And also, all votes need to be counted in the precinct of where they're at, not shipped off to a big county and then tabulated. And so those are some of the main things that we need to do for election integrity.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, same question.
Very good, Rich. Our current SOS is still involved. Why? We see what's going on down there. Voters' rolls need to be purified. When the county clerk sent them out to Lansing and then they come back, they're not matching. Something's going on there that's wrong. Voter ID, I agree totally with that. There's, we need that, especially with what's coming in from out of state and illegal immigrants. I do believe the voting should be a legal holiday. Why not? And then we know and get those end results that same day. So there's where I stand.
Thank you. Mr. Dio.
Yes, I completely agree. We have to have voter ID. We have to support our congressional districts and making sure that that happens at the federal level. That's very important. It's a big topic right now. We also have to vote in November a new Secretary of State. We have to have these voter rolls cleaned up. That can happen. We have to make it too big to rig, as Trump once said. We have to make too big to rig. We have another couple other issues that are facing our elections as well. We have the national vote too. We cannot allow this to happen. We would be washed over. We would be a flyover state then because we just don't have the people like other states do. We have to make sure that that does not happen, and we can make sure that we are not opted into that at the state level. Another issue facing our elections is ranked choice voting. You think our elections take a long time right now? With ranked choice voting, they would take way longer. We would turn into a California where we don't even know the results 3 weeks after the elections, and we can't let that happen. So we have to protect that. We have to, reinstate voter ID across the country. Like I said, we have to support our congressional districts and make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Mr. Isaac.
So absentee voting was about over 30% of Michigan in the last primary election, and I expect this time to be closer to nearly half. It is, I think, the future, for better or for worse. And I've met a lot of older folks that really value that, the people sitting in nursing homes that were so excited to be able to engage in the process again. So that's here to stay. Now, the way to keep absentee voting clean is to keep clean voter lists, as we've heard from everyone else. Right now, maybe you know there's a lot of mess over the voter lists, and they don't match, and our Secretary of State is covering stuff up. We don't want to have to depend on a favorable Secretary of State who can swing things either way. We need legislation that makes reviewing those lists a mandatory and probably bipartisan process by committee, probably at the county level, to go over those lists and verify. And we have to pay someone to do it, but at the county level, go over those lists and verify that everyone there is not 130 years old and didn't move to Anchorage. Okay, so clean lists are probably the most important thing we can do. Of course, the SAFE Act is going to be important too. Another important thing we could do with our election time is millages. Right now, our millages take place on a May election where 2% of people show up. Okay, this is how we fund our schools and other stuff. Now, this is public money, it's subject to public vote. If they move that to November, there would be a lot more accountability between the people and all the things that are asking for millages. And so I think there's a reason it's in May. Let's get them on the same ballot that we all show up for.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Same question.
I agree with what everyone has said here, so we don't need to go over that. It does need to be cleaned up. But the practicality of it is, if we don't get the Senate and we don't get the governor, if we did get them, it happened on day one, we'd be able to implement this. So we need to get as many people out to vote this time as possible. I mean, this is the primary. Not a lot of people vote in the primary even. And so especially in areas where Democrats rule, we need to get a Republican that overcomes that. And if we did that, we could do all of these things that was said. Right now, we can't do it. So I throw up my hands in disgust and in frustration. So that's what we've got to do. We've got to get people out to vote. I'd be glad to get 5,000 votes and lose. It means a lot of people are out voting, and they'll vote in some new senators, and they'll vote in the governor. But I don't want to lose.
I get 5,001. You get the 5,000, I'll get 5,000.
I was going to change my name to Ben Vance because of the vice president, but you already beat me to it. I'm done, I'm sorry.
All right, we will circle back to Mr. Anderson at the top for our next section on property taxes. Property taxes support schools and local services, but they are also an increasing burden on homeowners, farmers, and businesses. How far would you go to reduce or eliminate property taxes, and what trade-off would you accept to make that possible?
Again, I think we all agree that we are paying way too much in property tax. I pay home property tax, and as a business owner, I pay property tax there, and it's unphenomenal. This issue has been going on, again, for many years. Property taxes are one of the key ways that our schools and local government are funded. There's a current bill, HB 5872- I think LNC that addresses property tax reshaping. I think that's a great idea to reshape. I like the sounds of that. There are fiscal implications for counties and other local governments due to the absence of defined reimbursements for this lost revenue. So we need to find a common denominator and bring our property tax down for all.
Thank you. Mr. Dior?
Yeah, as you said, there is legislation in the House right now. A couple of things that it does, it eliminates the pop-up and transfer tax on real estate. It also removes the school educational tax, which is the 6 mills that we pay out of our property taxes. It goes to the state, and they shuttle it to Detroit. But it also requires villages to be on a November ballot. That is so important. If we want to get a true turnout of how we are going to spend our money, how we're going to spend our property taxes, you got to put on a ballot that everyone shows up to. A May 5th election just doesn't work anymore. People don't show up for it, and the 100 people that do decide how the rest of us pay our taxes. But a really important one is removing the school educational tax. That money is funneled to the state, and the state says, we're going to funnel it all to Detroit. We don't see that money again. What we can do is we can remove that school educational tax and allow for your local communities to decide if you need more funding for your local schools. Your property taxes should always remain local. The ones that you do have to remain local. So those are a couple ways that we can reform it, but we also have to be honest with ourselves that the property taxes do fund a lot of services that we all like to use in our areas, but I think it should be up to the majority of the people to decide whether you want to use those services or not.
Thank you. Mr. Acton?
Right, so these property taxes, of all the taxes we pay, and there are many different ways at federal and state level, these are the ones that fund some of the things we love the most, and and we have more control over that money than we do over a lot of money that goes to DC or to Lansing. So that money is there for a reason, but it's gotten out of hand, and I've talked to I don't know how many seniors who said, I don't know if I can afford to live here anymore. So there's a bunch of things we can do. First thing is the expenditure side. Everyone wants to cut a tax. Milton Friedman said, cut the expenditures, then we'll have lots of fun cutting taxes. We need to figure out where that money is going, and it's hard to talk about property taxes without talking about education reform. I also spoke with a teacher. She said, I've been in the school system for 40 years. I've been a teacher. She says, we get way too much money. And she wasn't talking about teacher salaries, but there's a lot of money going into that isn't going to teachers and is driving up the cost for all of us. Another question is the uncapping question. Many seniors are stuck in homes that are maybe 4-bedroom, 2-story. It's not an appropriate place for them to live anymore. What they need is a 2-bedroom ranch. But if they move to that place, which has half the square footage, they will see their property taxes triple. Okay? Even if we can't agree on much else with the Democrats, I think we could agree that that's not helping anyone, and we could probably get a little over 65 SEV equivalent deal in place so that people can move to those smaller homes that have a lower value, and instead open up the other homes for the families that have a bunch of kids like mine that need them. There's a lot of things we can do with this, but it's an impact.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend?
I think schools are still way overfunded. I homeschooled all my kids and paid for some of their college too, but they didn't need to spend I didn't need to spend $10,000 on each child every year. That would have been $50,000. That would have been great. But no, we need to cut back at schools. We have an excellent school in Music. I was told it was number 2 out of 31 schools in Michigan. And what they did, they got rid of cell phones in the class. It's pretty simple, and they're actually learning now. But what we need to find is alternative revenue streams. For example, the DNR, they worked this with just licenses. That was amazing. That's an amazing thing, and they're able to help other DNR places too. And it's just amazing. Zoning, we get basically $5,000 from 10 townships for $50,000 yearly, but the rest of it is paid through zoning applications and issued permits and this group that's trying to put the solar farm in had to pay $4,600 just to get heard before us. So even if they don't go in, we've got their money. But it's alternate revenue streams is what we need. We need to have someone that can actually look and see how to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Banks?
Eliminating property tax, be careful on that phrase. Okay? We need to eliminate state property tax, which is about 12 to 18% of your total property tax. So if we eliminated state property tax, you're still going to deal with all your local taxes and so forth. And one of the ways that in the small rural communities we can do that is townships work together. We had a situation down in southeast Newaygo County, 3 townships, because as a city decided not to have their fire department be a part of the other townships. But the township got together and they worked out their problem and they solved it by working together. And the community came together and even began to raise some money. That's the American way. We, the American people, know how we can take care of each other. We don't need a bunch of bureaucrats coming down and taking money out of our wallet when we know how to take that money and we know where to put it best. Funding schools is way out of proportion. You got a pension plan that's $25 to $28 billion in debt. There are almost $33 to $35 billion worth of indebtedness in pension funds in the state. So that tells you right there that in the past 25, 26 years, we have gone $25 billion in debt. So out of that, there is so much to say on this, but we do need to eliminate the state part. The other we can work out locally.
Thank you. All right, our next section will be on small business. We'll start with Mr. Dior. Michigan has recently increased the minimum wage and paid leave requirements that many small and seasonal employers say are typical to approve. What state rule mandate would you change first to help small businesses in this district?
Yes, I'm very, very proud to be one of 3 non-incumbents in the state of Michigan to be endorsed by the Grand Rapids Chamber and have the designation as a friend of West Michigan businesses. That's a huge endorsement of mine. I'm very, very proud to have received that because I've worked with them on policy on how we can help our small businesses and mid-range businesses here in West Michigan. Some of the policies that we can introduce immediately, like I said, we gotta have the control to do it, is right to work, repealing the prevailing wage, one Fair Wage Act, and the Sick Paid Leave Act. I was sitting down with a business owner yesterday who told me that it cost him about $6,000 on 20 employees to comply with these mandates. These are unfunded mandates that are dictated by our state government, many of them by bureaucrats, that small businesses have to comply with in order to stay in business. That's a problem. We have to address that right away. So, like we said, the bureaucrats are horrendous in the state. They're implementing all these laws. How do we fix that? Day one, we implement a no stricter than federal standard in our state. We can do this through the legislation. It's already been done, but we're going to have the control to pass it. What this does is it allows the legislators to go after these bureaucrats and say, you overruled what the federal government said. You cannot do that anymore. Now we can go after you with litigation and keep you on your toes, essentially, keep you mandated to what you can actually control in our state and not go beyond that.
Thank you, Mr. Isaac.
Yeah, as a small business owner myself, I see this in person. We need to review the existing regulations and go through them and find out, are they scale appropriate, each one as we go through them. I know in my area of expertise as a farmer and as someone who has done a lot of animal processing and stuff, they're definitely not one size fits all. You need millions and millions of dollars before you can cut up a single pound of hamburger. And it seems that perhaps if you process a beef every 2 weeks, as some of the local shops do, or beef every 2 days, you're very different than somebody who processes a beef every 30 minutes. And you need a different set of regulations. But these regulations, they're set costs, so they don't scale well. 1099s are another big one, okay? There's a movement out there to get rid of 1099s in Michigan, as they did in California. The effect of that on the black market would be impressive. It would be a lot less tax dollars because everyone would be working for cash who isn't already. In fact, the amount that you can work on a 1099 was set in, I think, the 80s at $600. And maybe it should be scaled up to match about what inflation has brought us to right now, so that these little small businesses can handle these smaller jobs and hire people to work and keep moving on that. There's an Amish place not far from here. They have a produce stand as well. They were unable to operate because of Michigan state regulations requiring them to have electricity on site. It's just another example of this adversarial relationship rather than a solutions-oriented relationship. So we need to go through our regs to make sure that they are appropriate to the scale in question, whether you're dealing with healthcare costs or everything else.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Well, it says a mandate. What would be the first mandate? And that would be take back the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and get rid of them because there's no accountability over them. The state gives them money and they do whatever they want. Now they do some good things. I have friends that are in that group, but there's no accountability. I would give it instead to groups like Networks Northwest. We have 30 board members, 10 county commissioners, 10 workforce development people. I'm on the workforce development part of the board, and 10 talent and development board members. Those are people in the arts. Those are people from colleges. We have all the big wigs from up here in northern Michigan. Well, I would give the money to that because I see every line item that comes in and goes out, and all of us do. And our finance committee is one of the best anywhere. I would do where we have accountability to help small businesses with accountability, so that even you guys know, because we put out all our material, you guys know exactly where the money's going. Right now, even though I like them, we don't know where all the money's going, and that's just wrong.
Thank you.
We need to take our own desires out of it and put our people first while still maintaining our conservative values. I will work with fair-minded folks to represent here. Jobs here, security here. We need it.
Thank you. Mr. Drew?
Yeah, I have no problem finding a common ground in the legislature. We have to do that. If we want to get anything done, especially when Republicans are not in control, you have to work together, you have to negotiate on behalf of common sense legislation that positively affects everybody here in Michigan. We have to do that right away. That is because political theater does not matter as much as results. We have to have results. We have to have a negotiator there, and somebody who's not willing to bow down. If we have control of the House of Representatives, then we should not be bowing down to what the other side wants to push in. So we do have a control in our state budget. On our state budget, we have to use that to our advantage. One thing that we cannot compromise is our morals and our values. We cannot. Our morals and our values are out there. All of ours are blatantly out there. We cannot compromise those, but we can negotiate to get better results for everybody that we represent.
Thank you. Mr. Eisen?
Yeah, so compromise, it sounds like such a dirty word. Compromise on your values is never an option. If someone says, look, I can help you get reelected if you'll just support this, that's a compromise on your value. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid when we're sending good people to Lansing. Compromising on the outcomes, it's the nature of life, politics, marriage. I mean, there's always compromise on where you want to be headed and how you're getting there. America has a long history of being a place of political discourse. I mean, if you think back to 250 years ago and they're sitting in a stuffy room in Philadelphia and they argued and they fought, but I don't think they called each other as many names as we do on social media right now. So when Ben Franklin and Jefferson were going at it, you know, it starts with respect. You want to get something done, you're going to need to be able to interact with people, and it's going to be hard after you flame them online, even if they, as you think, so richly deserve it. So it starts with some respect. I've had a lot of Democrats at the doors I've met, a number of whom, after listening to me, were just appreciative of anyone who is willing to work for a respectful, common dialogue. I'm looking for that. I also want to emphasize when it comes to compromise that there's a famous saying that the most robust agreements are the ones that people agree on for different reasons. And so if we can have a common ground, like conservation or something, and the hunters come at it from one side, and the green folks and tree huggers come at it from the other, and they have something, those things stick. They don't change when you have a change in governor. Compromise and is part of conversation and part of what I'm hoping to do when I get there.
Thank you. Mr. Vance, we will start with you on the next question. State laws and funding formulas are often written with larger population centers in mind. What does Lansing misunderstand most about Northern Michigan, and what would you do in this office to correct that?
Lansing misunderstands about everything. You know, I think we can start at that point. There are several things in relation to that. One is school transportation. They need to change the formulas where in the schools that their buses and that for their busing, they get a higher percentage per mile than what they do in the city because they just drive a lot more miles. Also, in the rural healthcare funding formula, Wexford County has to compete with Wayne and Oakland County for rural hospital fund. Now, wait a minute. They're in the city. They're not even in the country. And yet, the way it's written, they can qualify for those funds. And that puts Wexford at a disadvantage. Also, in our counties, we need to work with PA 1951 formula from 1951 on the center line miles. And we need to go back and redo the formulas on how counties get money for their roads. Wexford County, for example, has over 1,000 miles of roads, and yet they don't get the funds that they should in relation to the city. And the last thing is in the CAFO regulations on farms, Eagle's director came out and is telling farmers that they can't spread their manure in the wintertime. One guy made that regulation absolutely wrong, and it put a lot of pressure and financial burden on the farmers.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Michigan has been notorious for spending in bigger cities and turning a blind eye to northern Michigan. We need leaders to stand up and say, hey, look at us. Recently, rural Michigan was overlooked in a $6 billion subsidy grant spending spree. We call it a spending spree. Why wasn't any of our leaders saying, shouting out, we need some. We need some. We need it. Both Senate and House must work together for rural Michigan. Let's encourage people to get out and vote and get that to happen.
Thank you. Mr. Dewar?
What Lansing doesn't understand is that there's a lot of people outside of those big cities too, and a lot of times it's equal to the amount of people who live in the big cities. One way that we can address that is working with the appropriations chairs. There's a roadmap to do that. You have to build a relationship with them. If you build a relationship with the appropriations chairs, then you can ask for the appropriations to be funneled into your district. Currently, the 101st House District has no appropriation requests. We got to change that. We can't receive the money if we're not asking for the money. So we got to ask for the money. That happens with a legislator who's willing to spend the time, energy, and effort that it takes with the appropriations chairs to make sure that you guys are being heard and that the funding requests are there so that it can be funneled here. The money is there. It's not coming here though. We send our tax dollars to Lansing, it goes to Detroit. The other option is local control. It goes back to local control is everything. If we control our funds locally, then they can't go to the state and they can't be funneled to a different area or a big populated center. They have to stay local. You can regulate them better, you can use them better, but you can only do that if the local control is reinstated and protected.
Thank you. Mr. Adams?
Yeah, so I'd say like this district, this area has an example of a lot of funds that people were thinking would come, like whether FEMA funds or some of the colder fights downtown or the PFAS costs that people lose. The money should have been here, but it's not. And this is a characteristic of the problem. Policing costs, like school costs, are not distributed evenly between rural and urban areas. We can go there. We need to claw and fight for that. But we need some positive solutions to say, here's some options that can get us some of this what we need. One of them is thinking about the value of the tourism in the area. And that's something I believe that will resonate in Lansing. The Pure Michigan has actually been a very successful program. It's brought a lot of business to the area, and it's just been good. Another would just be getting some of those people out here. Man, if they saw what we had, maybe we could persuade them that it's something worth preserving and protecting. Finally, small towns are kind of the heart of these areas. When you look at these rural communities, you see the houses, and some of them are very nice houses, and some of them are very poor. But the small towns is where everyone gathers. If we can keep those alive, and we can get the funding into those, in the parks and in the businesses, and making sure that they have the amenities and they're taken care of, then we'll have a much healthier rural economy. We can just protect those.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, thank you. I kind of know about rural. I'm from Music. 300 people. People in Cadillac think it's the gateway to Crystal Mountain. That's what they refer to it as. There wasn't a lot of things going on in the rural areas when I was county commissioner. As a matter of fact, there were 3 county commissioners from Cadillac, 2 from Bedroom Cadillac, and then the other 4 were the rural areas. I was able to get a coalition together to help Springville Township build a library and a community center in downtown Music, and it's changed everything. The bank came there because of that. Other things are coming there. A new development is going just east of town with a Big Beast coffee, folks. But nonetheless, you have to fight for the rural areas, and you have to know how to get that together. By the way, I also know this because on the networks, on the Northern Lakes Mental Health Board, we represent 6 counties. I go to meetings in Houghton Lake, up in Leelanau, takes an hour, up in Grayling and in Cadillac. And I know those 350 employees, a lot of them have to drive many miles to get to the consumers, the ones that need help. And so I know the difference between a rural area and what we have to do versus a city area and what it normally has very close by. I'm thankful for Cadillac. Don't please get it out, because Cadillac people won't vote for me if you get it out. But just be careful. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move to our next section, start with Mr. Anderson at the end. Question 10 is about Republican accountability. Republicans currently control the Michigan House, the United States House, and the federal executive branch. Can you name an area where Republicans are currently falling short, and what should they do differently?
Sure can. Working together. They're not working together. Seems like the House and the Senate are at odds. The state party continues to be in turmoil. In my opinion, there are 2 separate groups fighting for control. I've seen this firsthand back in 2022 to 2024 when I was a county chair for Nuevo. A lot of division still apparent. Until that time, when we can come together, our effectiveness will be in jeopardy. We need to hold those in office accountable. We need to come together. Otherwise, we're going to lose this election.
Thank you. Mr. Dior?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Accountability begins with transparency and showing up for your people right off the bat. It's incredibly important that we come together as Republicans and realize that there is another side. There's another side that we should be going after. There's another side that is coming after us, and they're united. There's a reason the Democrats continue to win elections. It's because they're united. They're a money-making machine, and they are so united in all elections, and we sit here in a primary and fight each other. We cannot allow that to happen. That's the reason we're losing elections. You can look at our governor race right now. We're all fighting over a different candidate, but at the end of the day, the Democrats have their candidate. They're ready to fight, and we're not. We can also, one thing that I've noticed is we don't always use our position of power and what we do have control of to benefit our people. When it comes to the state budget, we do have control of the House. We still have to pass our state budget. State budget has doubled since Governor Whitmer took office. That's a problem. We cannot sit there and let that happen. We do have control, and a lot of times we do say, we don't have control of the Senate, we don't have the executive seat, but we do have one branch of our government. So we have to use that to our advantage. We have to be ready to negotiate with the other side and with the other chambers of our state legislature to get things done.
Thank you. Mr. Isaac, same question?
Yeah, so the Bible says that if you want to be a leader, you must be above reproach. The first thing we need to do is hold ourselves as a Republican Party to the highest standards of integrity and hard work. Okay, people don't show up. Their fellow elected representatives and the people, their constituents, need to call them out. People, if they have some sketchy business dealings or something going on that needs to be addressed, it's easy to call out the other party, but we will gain the respect of the people of Michigan and their support if we hold ourselves to the highest standard first and honest about that. Second, we need to work together as a legislature. When this nation was founded, the people who put it together thought the legislature would be the most powerful branch, and they were worried about that. And they were wrong. It turns out that a divided legislature is going to continue to cede power at both the federal level and the state level to the executive branch, and the executive branch is just going to keep growing and growing and appointing people to rule over us who are not elected. So we need, as a legislature, to work together and then to claw some of that power back so we can make the decisions that we were elected to make for the people that sent us here. Yeah. Karen.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Republicans have to work together, as a matter of fact, because a lot of times they don't. I know the Democrats, as Mr. Dewar said, work together. They try to pass what they want. They try to pass their agenda. Republicans need to work together just as much as the Democrats work together. As a county commissioner, I came to a meeting that was on the agenda to double the pay of county commissioners per year. I looked at that and I went, what are you trying to do? And I talked to them behind the scenes. I said, what in the world? This is the worst thing that could ever happen. Why haven't you been increasing it by cost of living over the years, which is normal and natural? They took account of what all the other county commissioners around here were making, and some of those counties are even bigger than Wexford County. Well, it was an 8-1 vote. I'll tell you what, I had an enjoyable time voting against doubling our pay for the year. However, I still got the raise. And since all my money was going to all my commissioner money was going to my daughter in Zambia, who helps orphans and widows, she got double that year. So I praise the Lord for that too.
Thank you. Mr. Vance, the same question.
There's this attitude among Republicans, my way or the highway. If they can't have it exactly the way they want it in a meeting or in a vote, then they walk away from the whole thing instead of coming alongside and realize maybe there is a different angle to this. The other thing is, if you don't vote Republican, don't run as a Republican. And we have